Well, have you ever been really scared? Really scared. Felt the butterfly, scared. Twice. I get twice. Okay. Yeah. And you felt that fear, but you did it anyway. And then how did you feel? When I was growing up in a small town in Virginia, we had a community pool that was built and came in a little town, but a big pool. And there was 3 diving boards. And I remember that when I wanted to start going off of the diving board, that I started with the low boards. There was 2 low ones and 1 high one. And the 2 low ones, one was really firm, so you could almost stand on the end of it and it wouldn't bounce. You could just jump off. And it wasn't too bad. It wasn't very high off the pool water. So I started with that one. Well, then I got my courage up and went over to the one that was a little more springy. And if you get out on the end of that one, it starts doing this, and then you jump hard, and it'll really throw you out there, if you've ever had that experience with a real springy board. So I got used to that one. But then I started eyeing that high board. I'm going to say it was about 10 feet in the air above the pool. And I decided I wanted to do that. But every time I thought about it, I would get butterflies. And I would start walking towards the boards, and I would walk past that high board, and I would keep going. I wouldn't get on the ladder. Until one day I finally got on the ladder, and I started climbing up. Well, that scared me, just climbing up the ladder, right? Well, I get up to the top, and up the top there's handrails. Whew, I felt pretty good there. I've got a flat thing I'm standing on that's not moving, and I've got handrails to hang on to. And I noticed I had this gorgeous view. Wow, I'd never been up that high to look around and see everything that was around there. But then I looked out and looked at the end of the board, and it looked like it got really narrow at the end. So as I began to make my way out, and I'm holding the rails back here as tight as I can before I can get to the end of the board, and I didn't want to do it. I was really afraid. It was very high. The water was way down there, and I had butterflies, and I felt like my knees were weak. I was really, really scared. And finally, somebody came up behind me on the board, and they're like, hurry up, it's my turn. I wanted to climb back down, I really did. But I knew that I couldn't possibly make that whole thing work and get around that person and climb back down the ladder. So I knew I just had to go. So I went and I jumped. And I remember being in the air and thinking, I'm going to die, right? And then the water... And then I wondered, am I going to sink all the way to the bottom of this pool? It's like 12 feet deep here. Am I going all the way to the bottom because I jumped from so high? And of course I didn't. And I bounced right back up. And I remember coming out of the water with such joy and delight on my face for having done it and survived. And then going to the side of the pool and deciding to go do it again and again and again until I got to the point where I could actually dive head first off of that board. But that happened when I was about 12 years old. And I still remember that fear of getting through that process and the joy of having accomplished it. And that's what our book is talking about this month. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's what my talk is today, as we complete our series this month, which is Mindfulness for Mavericks. Mindfulness for Mavericks. And we've been looking at how mindfulness works with our affirmative prayer, how it works with our treatment. And we know that treatment, of course, is speaking our word affirmatively, claiming our good, and speaking that into the universal law. And we have a saying in the science of mind that is treat and move your feet. Right? Treat and move your feet, which means being aware and paying attention to the serendipitous things, the coincidences that are now coming your way because you've planted this idea in universal mind, and things are going to start showing up. And we have to be aware of that. So we're moving our feet and taking action on those things that are happening. We get an intuition to go a different way to the store, or we get an intuition to step in this line instead of that one, and maybe strike up a conversation with this person who suddenly becomes the link to someone we really need to get to know to advance our dream, or maybe they're the link that is going to advance our dream. But those sorts of things start showing up for us when we are aware and paying attention both internally and externally to what's happening. And that's the moving our feet part of treatment. And when we are doing that, When we're treating, it's because we want something to be different in our life, or we're calling in something that's not there right now. And we've got to do things differently, don't we? Because if we were doing it the way to make it happen in our lives, it'd already be there. So we've got to make a change in order to make something happen. We've got to start looking at things differently. But I want to back up just a little bit about treatment. And it's a lot like what that reading was saying that I read this morning from Dr. Holmes. When we begin our prayers, we have a mental picture or a physical feeling of what it is that we want to have, don't we? It's either a mental picture if you're a visual person, or maybe it's a feeling of how you're going to feel once you achieve whatever this prayer is about. And let's say we're treating for healing. If we're treating for healing, what is the experience of health that we're seeking? How do we want to feel on the other side of it? What does it look like on the other side of the diagnosis? If we're treating for abundance, wealth, cash flow, what does that look like? How much is enough? Are we treating for a sense of safety and security? There's a place in us that just doesn't feel safe and secure unless we've got a whole bunch of money. And how much is that? If somebody just plunked down $10,000, is that enough? Does that make you feel safe and secure? Does it need to be 10 million? You know, how much does it need to be? Do we have that clear mental picture of what it is that we are calling forth in our lives? And then if it's for peace, peace is something a lot of us are praying about right now. What does that look like? Is it make them change so I can feel peaceful? We know that doesn't work, right? It's got to be that deep peace within us. How do we feel peaceful? How do we find peace within ourselves so that we then begin to experience peace around us? This is a really, really important first step of treatment, is knowing what we're treating for, isn't it? It's a very important thing. If you've taken foundations with me or treatment with me, you know the first thing we do is the icky stuff, right? What's the condition? What's the condition that we are wanting to change? And then the next thing is, what's the purpose of this treatment? What is the purpose of this prayer? That's where we're creating this mental equivalent, mental image, or physical feeling within our body of what it is that we're calling forth in our lives. That's where we're doing that. So once we're clear and our treatment is complete, that's when we begin to take right action. And that's what Ernest Holmes was talking about. He's the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, and he's also the author of The Science of Mind that we teach from. And he tells us in that book, Basic Ideas of Science of Mind, the good you have chosen and planted in the realm of cause requires definite action on your part, and it needs to be right action. Okay, what is right action, right? What is right action? According to the Science of Mind, right action means that every legitimate and constructive purpose you have in mind will be successfully executed. It means that you will know what to do, how to think, how to act, how to proceed. You definitely know that if your thought is in accord with the divine nature, it actually is the law of God enforcing itself in your experience. There is nothing in you or around you which can limit your constructive thought. The power of this law is within you, and the action which results from this power produces harmony, peace, joy, and success. There is nothing in you or around you which can limit your constructive thought unless you allow it, right? We're beings of choice. We get to choose what we're allowing in and out of our conscious awareness. Our Book of the Month author, Susan Jeffers, she bases this book on the idea that our greatest fear is that we can't handle whatever life tosses at us, that we just can't handle it, that we just can't do it. Whether it's illness, whether it's a loss, whether it's an accident, whether it's a health challenge, even death. We're afraid that we can't handle whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, we can. We can. We may not like it, probably won't, but we can handle it. We can handle it. 1 Corinthians in the Bible tells us that we will not be given more to bear than we can handle. That sure seems tough, particularly in the first 6 months of 2020, right? We've been handling a lot. We have been handling a lot. And I've heard a few times this week, what else is going to happen? Anybody else felt that way? What else is going to happen? It just seems like stuff is coming at us constantly right now. This year has just been full of stuff. We've had the coronavirus, the shutdown of our country. We've had murder and race riots and looting and COVID spiking now in Arizona again, and now all these brush fires, all these forest fires. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it's easy to let our minds run off into fear, isn't it? To overwhelm. To be overwhelmed by everything that's happening out in the world of effects. And then that's followed by that big question mark. What is next? What is next? We might be feeling like a victim of some capricious or angry God that's just going, here, take this, see if you can handle that. But we know that's not true, right? We know that's not true. But we're scared, and when we're scared, we all react differently, don't we? We all react differently. In the book, she talks about how some people react from a pain place of fear, and some react from a power place of fear. When I was up on that high dive, and too embarrassed to say I was afraid to crawl back down that ladder, I was in a power place, wasn't I? I was going to power through my fear. Yeah, I was in a power place. Had I been in a pain place, I might have just said, get out of my way, I've got to go back down. I may never have gotten up there in the first place, right? Yeah. So we all react to fear differently. We've seen people blaming and lashing out and attacking. And we've seen people retreat and hibernate and disappear and not participate. And I'm not saying either of those is wrong. I'm just saying we're humans, and that's how we react to fear. We've all got a fear response that we react from. But it's in our teaching, and I think most of us have experienced that when we can think a positive thought, when we can think a healing thought, when we can think thoughts of peace, and we can think thoughts of harmony, it feels better. It feels more empowering than it does to be in those fear thoughts. It's Abraham Hicks who says, reach for a better feeling thought. Now reach for a better feeling thought than that one, and a better feeling thought than that one. And we know that when we have and hold better feeling thoughts, we have better feeling outcomes, don't we? Yeah. And again, back to that idea of choice, we get to choose what we think. We get to choose what we think. Ernest Holmes says that developing confidence in ourselves and our ability to meet and handle all undesirable situations requires that we must have confidence in that something which is greater than we are. Then we will have spiritual self-reliance. When this is done, the lesser must always submit to the greater. Weakness will give way to strength. Despair will turn to hope. Hate will become love. Failure will become success. And sickness will dissolve into health. The action that takes place is not one of oppressive or overruling harshness, but one that moves in harmony, love, beauty, warmth, and order, quietly transforming all that is unlike itself. Quietly transforming all that is unlike itself. Reach for a better feeling thought that transforms the lesser thought, right? That transforms it. So we're back to faith, aren't we? We're back to faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in each other, faith in that something that is greater than all of it. Faith in that something that's greater than all of it. Right action is already here. If you've ever included in your prayer for divine right action, it's already here. You don't have to pray for that anymore. It's already here. We live in an orderly, ordered universe that loves us and supports us, no matter what it might look like out in the world of effects. It loves us and supports us. From our finite human minds, we can't see the giant scope of what is needed for everything to begin to fall into place. We can't see that. All we can see is this much. The dust storm. Anybody been reading about the dust storm? We had that haboob come through here several years ago. Was it 7 miles long or whatever? And a big dust storm, and oh my gosh, and there's another one coming off the coast of Africa across the Atlantic Ocean towards us, and oh, what pain and suffering we're going to have. Well, I was reading an interesting article about it this morning. I don't know if you've read this, but I found it fascinating. It is said that without dust storms, the coral reefs along Florida and the Bahamas probably would not exist. It is said that Florida would not have fertile soil where anything would grow without the dust having come in over the centuries to deposit rich soil on top of the sand, mix it in with the sand. It is said that we would be inundated with many, many more hurricanes than before because the dust comes in and dries out the moist air over the Atlantic, which diffuses some of the power of the hurricanes and the moisture that they draw. We need the dust storms. But we didn't know that. We thought it was a bad thing. Oh my gosh. But we need the dust storms. Something greater than we are knows that. Put that little system in place to blow a little dust over to the U.S. shoreline to take care of some hurricanes and build a little coral reef so people can go snorkeling and diving and the fish can live, and something greater than we are. An infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence. So remember, we don't treat the facts, the current facts. We don't treat the current facts. Remember my rant a few months back about the headache, right? We don't treat the headache. We treat for what we want, which is peace and ease and calm and joy and harmony throughout. Not, oh, the headache, it's got to go, it's got to go, it's got to go. We're just adding more energy to the headache. So we don't treat the current facts. They're what we want to change, and placing our focus there holds them in our experience. Our treatment is the total acceptance of the new fact that we are treating for, not the old one that we want to change. Remember the workshop, living from the bloom, the blossom. We live from where we want to be. We experience that in our mind of where we want to be, of what we want to experience, of the health, of the wealth, of the joy, of the love, of the peace. That's where we come from, is that place. And this is a very important component of treatment, and it speaks to the belief back of our words. You've all heard that if you've taken any classes with me. We talk about treatment. There's 5 steps. We can recite them. We know the words. It's the belief behind the words. What do we believe when we're speaking those words? That's what counts. This is simple. But again, it's not always easy to get our belief in alignment with our words and what we believe that we want. We've got to get our belief in line with it. Many want to talk about and focus on the drama. My diagnosis, my empty bank account, my broken relationship, my unemployment, right? Those things happen. Those things are life. But we know that we have the power to change that, but we have to focus on what it is that we want. We have to focus on the fact that we are revelations of spirit in form, here to live on the leading edge of consciousness, here to express God's activity through us and as us. We're not here to play small and focus on an empty bank account. We're here to restock that bank account and make it full, right? We're here to have loving, expansive relationships. We're here to have creative expression in which we're well rewarded. These are the things we're here for. But we get hooked up on the drama and want to stay over there in the stuff and play with it. So treat and move your feet. Take right action. There's a lot being said about taking action right now, isn't there? Some of it may not be right action for legitimate and constructive purposes. What actions are you taking in your life? What actions are you taking in your life? Are they for constructive purposes in the betterment of yourself, your family, your friends, your city, your planet? Are you taking right action? When there's blame and there's criticizing and outrage, that creates conflict, and conflict tears us apart, doesn't it? Conflict tears us apart. And we know, Jesus taught it, a house divided will not stand. A country divided will not stand. A community divided will not stand. A relationship divided will not stand. We know that. We know that. We must come together in the oneness. We must come together in unity. I remember when this whole virus thing started, somebody posted a meme on Facebook that said, we've all been placed in timeout, the old universal timeout. And it made me laugh, and it made me ponder. Where are we now? Are we out of timeout? Are we going back into timeout? What have we discovered? What are we discovering? Where are we with all of this? This is an important time, I think, for us, for our spiritual growth, for the growth of humanity, for our expansion, and how we deal with it, how we respond to it. We've had reactions. We've been watching reactions. How are we going to respond now as humanity to all that is happening, to the divisiveness, to the conflict, to everything? How are we going to respond as humanity, as religious scientists, as those who practice this teaching? How are we going to respond? For me, I think it is time for unity. And that's really my focus. You've heard me talk about it for the past month. That's kind of where I am. And I really think that's the solution, for us to all come together once again in unity. So let's look at some practicing the principles. And remember, if you have not, sign up for our Mindful Monday email that comes out. It's got the details of practicing the principles. It'll have quotes and things that you did not see today. And it'll have all that information in it. If you've not signed up already, it is out on the front counter. So number 1 is don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Anybody's parents ever say that to them? Mine did. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Everything was such a big deal, right? And Susan Jeffers, the author of our book this month, suggests in the big scheme of life, in the really big scheme of life, that it doesn't really matter. The things that we're afraid of, the things that we hold on to in fear about moving forward in our lives, the decisions and things, about speaking to that person or making that phone call or taking that action. She says it didn't really matter in the big scheme. And then she says the other part of that is, I'll handle it. Whatever it is, I'll handle it. I like the I'll handle it piece of that puzzle better, that whatever I'm afraid of, it's okay, I'll handle it. I'll handle it. But I want to be the first to congratulate each of you and all of you at home that you have survived the first 6 months of this year. You have survived your first pandemic thus far. I bet it's the first one any of us have been through. Anybody been through one before? Anybody been under a stay-at-home order before? Anybody had to wear a mask out in public before? Congratulations. You handled it. You handled it. And you're here. And you're here. So I'm going to invite you this week, not to dwell, but to just make notes about what you're afraid of. What fears are you dealing with? Little ones, could be big ones, but probably little ones that we face every day, all day long. Just make a note, what you're afraid of, what your fear is. Don't get intellectual about it, just write it down, and then tuck it away for about 30 days. End of July, pull it out, and see how you handled it. See how you handled it. And I think that will help you build even more confidence in your ability to handle whatever life brings your way. And the second is treat and move your feet and then take that inspired right action. Treatment is our most powerful spiritual technology that we teach in the science of mind. It's unique to most teachings, and it is powerful, and it does work. Who's had a manifested prayer? Yeah. We've all had manifested prayers in our lives. It does work. So this week I'm going to invite you to whatever it is you're focused on in your life right now, to call forward into it. Commit to yourself to do a treatment every day for that, and then to be aware. Write yourself a note, set a reminder, whatever, to be aware, to look for what's coming. What is showing up for me in support of the manifestation of this in my life? Oh, I'm feeling like an intuition, I should do that. That scares me. I'll write that down, but I'm going to do it anyway. Wow. You add all that together, you're going to see some great manifestations this week. But we've got to do that work. We've got to do that work. So I invite you, as you move through your week, to feel the fear, to rise over that decision. Rise up. Something that you're maybe want to procrastinate on. That's a way to know that we might have a little fear, right? If we're procrastinating, there might really be some fear under that about doing it or moving forward with it, or there might be some fear. So look at that, but then feel that fear and do it anyway, as Susan says. Fear will never go away as long as we continue to grow. Whew. That takes some of the pressure off, doesn't it? We all want to keep growing. Okay, so there'll be fear. And guess what? We're all in that together too, because everybody experiences it. Everybody experiences it. So I want to close this morning with a final quote from Ernest Holmes. He says, as you learn to release all of your burdens to the right action of God, you will find that everything falls into its proper place. You let your problems slip away from you, realizing that a power greater than you and a presence that is within you is ready, willing, and able to guide you in all ways. Then peace, security, and fulfillment come with ease, and there's a sense of joy and accomplishment. So it is. Would you join me for a prayer this morning? How good it is to recognize that there's God and nothing else. Not God and, not God or, but God and nothing else. It is that magnificent energy and power of the universe, that all-knowing infinite intelligence and wisdom, that which is wise enough to create the dust storms to support us, and all of the other things that we believe might not be for our good. Recognizing that in some way, somehow, God is good always. And so I know that this power and this presence is life itself, and it is all right here, right now, in through and out as each one of us as expressions of it, made in the likeness and the image of that divine power of harmony and beauty and love and joy and peace and intelligence, creativity. And so knowing that, it's easy to speak my word for and about each one of us in this wholeness and this oneness in which we live, move, and have our beings. Knowing that as we are expressions of this divine presence, that we create and manifest our lives. That we create and manifest more love, more joy, more peace, more beauty on this planet as our lives and the lives of those around us. For we know that when we are peace, we experience peace around us. And those that experience us experience our peace. They experience our harmony. They experience our love. And just maybe their love, peace, joy, and harmony expand also and influence those around them, creating a world that works for all. I know for any of us that have anything on our heart today, that as we lift it into this consciousness of this prayer, where two or more are gathered, I am there. We know that God is always here. And so we lift that desire, that prayer, that request for clarity or healing or whatever it might be. We lift it into this prayer now, into this love, into this light, knowing that it is done. And it is with a grateful and joy-filled heart that I just simply release this into that action of law, the action of mind, knowing that it is already done. We just await its manifestation in form. And we affirm this together by saying, and so it is.